Warning: this video contains explicit images of post-mortem death that some viewers may find distressing. Please bear this in mind before proceeding with viewing. Now let's get this straight right at the start. I don't believe in ghosts, spirits, things that go bump in the night, or any other heebie-jeebies. Similarly, reincarnation, the existence of souls, and other such superstitions. I've always said that a man with a knife will scare me, but not a ghost. So why this video then? Well, the truth is that I have seen some photographs that have gone some way to convince me that I might be wrong. Here's some background about me and why I have my disbelief. I grew up in a manor house that was built in 1698 and which has and had a reputation for being ferociously haunted. So much so that, in 1870, 12 parsons were summoned to the house to exorcise this so-called ghostly blue lady. Funny how often they are always a lady or lord, etc., never a cook or a stable boy. They must have been ineffective, as 2 exorcisms have been performed at the house since we left it. All very interesting, but I lived there until I was 18 years old and never saw a single ghost or heard a belated bump in the night. Certainly no blue lady or nearly headless Nick. De nada, nothing. So, for me, there has always been no such thing as ghosties and ghoulies. When I see one, I'll believe. Until then, forget it. I've seen television shows featuring the so-called supernatural and paranormal and have found them comic and boring. They always seem to feature neurotics and attention seekers who squeal and run at the drop of a hat. Pathetic, but presumably they are getting paid to put on an exhibition, and we must forgive their poor performances. I've been to just about everything that is supposed to be haunted. Battlefields, barns, castles, churches, schools, cathedrals, ruins, monasteries, caves, burial mounds, cemeteries, graveyards and mines, all without a single shiver. Just a lot of hysteria and hype, to say nothing of wasting my time. So as you can see, I am not a believer and have always considered that I would remain so. My parents always held no religious beliefs, and I have followed their example. For them, as for me, when you die, you are just meat rotting in the ground. Now, and to my amazement, I am not so sure, so certain. I am not an idiot, and when faced with what appears to be pretty concrete truth, I hope that I have the good sense to put aside my strongly held beliefs and admit that I could be wrong. What has driven me to this unlikely conclusion, driven me to change a lifetime's beliefs? It is the case of John Rarick Bulwer, who died December 27, 1984, at the age of 16 years in a road traffic accident. So let's have a look at this in detail. John Bulwer was born on the 21st of September 1968 and lived at 1485 Sargent Avenue, St. Paul, Minnesota. I know nothing of his life, but there appears to be absolutely nothing bad about him. From his photos, he looks a very pleasant guy. Certainly nothing aggressive and thuggish about him. Just a nice kid. It was 2 days after Christmas that John, with 3 of his friends, were in a car on their way to a Prince concert. John was in the front passenger seat and did not appear to have been wearing a seatbelt. He was not driving. The accident occurred around 7:45 at night on Edgecombe Road between Snelling and Montreal Avenues. It was reported that it was very foggy and raining and that the road was poorly lit. From the photographs, it would appear that the vehicle was an SUV looking very much like a Jeep. The road curved to the left, but not excessively so. For whatever reason, the SUV left the road and plowed into a group of 3 small to medium-sized trees. John was killed in the impact, and the driver and 2 other passengers were treated at St. Paul Ramsey Medical Center and released. Their injuries were so minor that none of them required even an overnight stay at the medical center. The incident was attended by the St. Paul Police, and it was Officer now Commander Brian Coyle who took the photographs that have affected me so. I have suffered a very large number of motor vehicle crashes and written off more cars than is polite. To my eyes, the damage to the SUV in the photograph is far less than any of the crashes that I survived, in all cases escaping with only minor scratches. It would appear that John Bulwer was extremely unlucky to so lose his life, particularly as his friends escaped serious injury. So now we come to this extraordinary photograph, which shows a series of golden energy bursts emanating around the damaged vehicle, and most telling of all, a fiery image of a fiery screaming head floating above the scene. An image that greatly resembles the head and face of John Rayrig Boulware. This photograph was taken by Officer Brian Coyle at the scene after the arrival of the medical responders. Officer Coyle reports that he saw no evidence of these manifestations at the time or afterwards. So, is it a hoax? I don't think so. The photograph would have been taken on 35mm film, certainly not digitally. I have worked as a professional photographer for a number of international magazines and had my own darkroom where I developed both monochrome and color film. I have also worked on special imagery effects in the movie industry, so believe that I bring strong knowledge and skepticism to this examination. Could these effects have been created in 1984? Most definitely they could. The energy bolts would not have been hard to fake, but the screaming fiery head would have been very much harder, particularly as it bears such a strong resemblance to John Boulware. The human brain is programmed to recognize faces and often does so in the most unlikely circumstances. A pattern in clouds, shapes in wallpaper or curtains. So we have to be careful that our brain is not tricking us here. I remember a colleague of mine who was convinced that he could see his deceased mother's face in his curtains, whereas I only saw rather tatty chrysanthemums. Is that the case here? I don't think so. Examining the image in close detail, you can see the definition of the eyebrows, the hairline, and the pattern and texture of the hair. It does match the image of the deceased boy. From what I have seen in interviews with Officer Coyle, he appears very sincere in his belief. Could the police lab have been playing a joke on Officer Coyle? An April Fool's Day prank? Of course it is possible, but it would be the cruelest of actions. A 16-year-old boy tragically died here, and I do not believe that anyone would use this terribly sad occasion to pull such a prank. Policemen are not known for their sense of humor. My grandfather was a police inspector, and he was a miserable sod, certainly not capable of pranking anyone. Is this photograph genuine? I believe so. The skill and knowledge necessary to fake this image would be beyond even the most experienced of technicians back in 1984. To be certain, or as certain as I could be, I would need to see the original negatives, interview the friends, police and parents, and even see the wrecked vehicle. Obviously, this will not and cannot happen after this long period of time. I must come to my own opinion given the knowledge that I have, and the fact that I am an agnostic who is extremely skeptical about all matters supernatural and paranormal. After my grandmother's death, my mother went to an alleged psychic to try to contact her. In my opinion, the so-called reading was a disgrace, a total con that anyone with the slightest acting ability could have pulled off. Most of it was just plain wrong and taking advantage of the grief for a lost, much-loved relative. I don't believe in psychics. I don't believe in ghosts, elves, fairies, pixies, leprechauns, unicorns, poltergeists, or anything of that nature. I am an agnostic. But very much to my surprise, for right or for wrong, I find that I do believe in the events that are portrayed in this image. There are exceptions. I am told that there is the reflection of a chocolate Labrador in the car door, John Boulware having apparently owned a similar dog that had passed on. I don't buy into this. If it is the spirit of this deceased pooch, what's it doing gawping at a car door when it should be caring for the poor teenager? Similarly, I don't believe the three hazy figures to our left in the photo are celestial relatives sent to guide John Boulware to a better life. If so, they are not making much of a job of it. The apparition of the poor kid is screaming in horror at what has happened to him, and no amount of ghostly hand-wringing is doing any good. Surely they should be around John comforting him. To me, these so-called ghosts are no more than either the creation of light on the fog and light rain that was reported as falling, or they are products of the negative not being washed correctly after developing and fixing. This is a subject that we must all make up our own minds about, using experience and skills rather than believing what we want to believe or not to believe. For all my skepticism and hatred of dogma, I find that, until proven otherwise, I believe in this image as proof of something outside of my experience. Something that happens at the point of death or very shortly after death, and I am stunned that I have come to this conclusion. Can one or even a collection of photographs alter one's religious and long-held beliefs? What do you think? Please let me know in the comments below, and also any similar experiences that you may have had and which you believe to be true. Rest in peace, John Rarick Bulwer.